Stephanie,
Thank you.
welcome. Yes, Madam Chair.
You sound like you're stressed tonight.
It's hard only working part-time, and I'm coaching the middle school baseball team over to Bangor Christian, so I just got off the baseball team. It is, it's a lot.
It was a nice day today too.
Yeah.
A little muddy still?
A little bit, yeah, the outfield's still a little.
I've been over to the high school complex the last 2 or 3 nights. My granddaughter's on the junior high track team, and I'm amazed at the number of people, kids over there. I mean, I bet there was 100, 150 kids doing a variety of different things. I mean, just being used, cars coming in, going, driving, kids out, picking them up. It's good to see it being used as much as I was surprised. She said to me that I can't use my new bike.
Yeah, let's go ahead and start.
They haven't got the track.
Just almost.
Yeah, it's gotta be certified.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Richard Burgess.
Here.
Brian Vendiano.
Here.
Stephanie Euler.
Here?
John Lorenz.
Yes, sir.
Kim Nichols.
Here.
Ed Ford.
They're here.
I'll go down through those who aren't here, and just mark those that are present. Sure.
Thank you.
Alright, so, I mean, everybody got an agenda?
Yes, sir.
And there are some papers that were passed out prior to, if anybody, now's a good time, if you wanna just briefly go through, if you have any questions of what their content is or anything, you can take a minute and address those.
So wait a second.
I'll take that extra one from you if you're.
Yes, and I have an extra purple too, and I am not hoarding. So, oh, no, no.
It's a 2-page.
Thank you.
Welcome.
So these items in the purple would be minutes from last, and the yellow are it's basically a summary of what we've already gone through. I think it's safe to say that's a draft at this point.
Mhm.
I know they've been voted on, but I think that's considered draft. And in the end, when we're ready, this will probably be similar format of what we're going to present to the council once we're done. And so, if we want to start a new business, I don't know if during the week did they email you any items of concern or?
Nothing,
Okay.
nothing to me.
Okay. Usually we could start with those if somebody had it, so. And so we're gonna go to new business and we're gonna try to go off, and Rick had passed out a document here talking a little bit about the motions.
Yeah, there was a question, or a couple people had asked, if I would help them with motions, and we talked about, said we wouldn't give them motions, but we would simply. So I,
Whatever you usually do, thank you.
So I prepared two choices on motion, just to give them an idea if they wanted to comply with what we were discussing, or if they did not want to, and just give them an idea in black and white, and certainly can use that or not, whichever.
I make a suggestion on that one that you just handed out. If we all would write down RB, what's today? 417,
17.
then we'll all
Thank you.
know, when we have to refer to this, that we're referring to the same thing. Because what happens is, you know how stuff gets lost in my file here.
Are you looking for a motion to approve the minutes?
Sure.
Make a motion to approve the minutes from April 10th.
Second.
I just want to take a look. I didn't see any changes, but. Yep.
So the agenda doesn't list any items, so if it's okay with the committee, we'll just, if people have items they want to discuss. We did receive some items of interest, obviously, when the committee started, and also I think Ricketts handed out something that he had put together, just suggestion of discussion, so if people have an item, go ahead.
Do we need to vote on the minutes, please?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sure. I'll run down through.
Thank you.
Rick Burgess.
Yes.
Brian Venziano.
Yes.
Stephanie Euler.
Yes.
John Lorenz. Yeah. Kim Nichols.
Yes.
Ed Ford.
Yes.
6-0.
That's an easy one.
So again, just pulling these agenda items out, if somebody has an item burning now that they wanna discuss or talked about over the week, certainly now would be the time. If not, I'm just gonna start, basically at the top of maybe where we have left off in the past.
Could I just ask, Josh, I think the budget thing with the lawyers, with the documents, since that was kind of one of the ones we were wrestling with. Just an update, some of us we talked to before we started, but
Yeah, so,
lawyers under here yet?
yep, so part of the discussion from last week was the attorneys didn't, I think, understand what I was asking them for as far as the validation and the budget portion, so I emailed them. I did get a response from Tim B saying that we will provide you some information or we'll circle back around and get it. Because he was in the initial conversation and the gentleman that, the attorney from Redmond and Winchell who put it all together was not. So I don't have anything as of today, but hopefully for next week's meeting, they'll have something for us.
There was another item that we were gonna talk to them about the week before and didn't get a chance, and I mentioned it last week. You said you would. I don't remember what it was.
I have that down, but that was part of the,
Well, there was problems, remember, with the language on one of them, and you were gonna refer back and say, is this what you really meant?
I think we were just looking to clarify this document, red line changes. is-
Right, exactly, yeah.
I know it's tough when you're working 2 days a week, it's hard to get anything done.
I'm gonna log in and try to get it done.
That's easy, that's easy.
So, we'll just start at the top there, discuss. So I don't know if we've started the discussion, but we were gonna have a discussion on having 2 members for RSU 87, requiring 1 from each town. Did we get into that at all? I don't think we did.
So we had a motion to have the same term limits, and that one failed. And I don't think we got
Right.
the numbers. And can I ask a question, is that still section 6.01?
I believe so. Pull that out.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, it is.
And I think it just clarifies, it tells there's 2 members. Our discussion would be around, do we wanna ask them to have 1 per town?
Since the last meeting, I had a conversation with both town managers, Levant and Carmel, and the new one from Carmel, he's temporary until May 1st, but he's acting right now. He wasn't aware that he didn't have a representative serving on our school committee. He said, I'm surprised, he said, I will look into that, so.
So is their school committee, could it be made up of all people from Levant, or how did they do that?
What he told me, and he really wasn't knowledgeable, so he got the town clerk involved, she was a little more knowledgeable than him, and then Scott and Levant said the same thing, basically what Brian had said last week, confirmed it, that they each have 3-member school committees. And those 3 members together, creating 6 members, become the board of directors of RSU 87. And we talked a little bit last week about the fact of whether or not they had to pick somebody from those 6 to serve on the Hermon committee or not, and neither one of them knew. Neither one of them didn't know if they could use an outside person or not, and that's kind of an up in the air question, because it doesn't specify
Right.
in here, it just simply says they can send somebody.
I mean, if you look at the definition of RSU versus the school department, the RSU is the board of directors, so that's why the town probably doesn't understand what they can or can't send, because they send somebody to the RSU. Our charter is with the RSU, it's not with the town.
Right.
So I could see why the town wouldn't understand it, because the town isn't directly involved.
What it didn't seem common knowledge to either one of them really, who ran the RSU, other than the superintendent. That out of those 6, was there a chairman or was there not?
There is, there's a chairman, Sharon Knowles is the
The one that used to
chairperson.
serve on our.
Yep, she used to be on ours, and then I think Jessica Meeks, can't think of her first name. She's the vice chair.
And it is a distinct separation,
Mhm.
you know, in some of the towns that I've worked in, it's, we'll get the school number when we get it, and that's really about all the conversation they have about anything. So, yeah.
Certainly the contract lists 2 members from the school committee.
The charter does not.
Our charter does not.
The old charter specified 1 from each town, but at some point in time that got changed. And I couldn't find where it happened, probably in the notes somewhere. Because it just says amendment, dates, and if you look at the charter, it doesn't tell you what each amendment covered.
Why does it, I was thinking the SAD came before the RSU.
It did, it was SAD 20.
So then they were just DBA, SAD 23 just to keep the,
I think when the
letterhead good, or-
state changed their
Yeah.
mandates on how they classified them, and you could either become an RSU or not,
Yeah.
and that's when it changed. And I wasn't involved in it, so I can't really tell you much about the process.
I just would have expected it to say SAD 23, doing business as RSU 87.
Yeah.
not the other way around. How did I look at it?
But I think what Brian said the other day was that the SAD essentially doesn't even exist now.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, I talked to Debbie, they have removed SAD. Yeah, as they go through documents, everything, the official is RSU 87.
So, I mean, so what's the conversation people have as far as adding that into our charter? So the discussion would be making sure, in the charter, saying that one has to come from each member of the RSU 87 group, which is one from Carmel and one from Levin. And again, so the thing would be, you know, just for equal representation, they certainly in their charter, when they have school board members, I mean, when they, you know, they clearly are running right down the middle, 3 each, so.
And neither town has a charter, so.
Yeah, right.
You know what I would, maybe unrealistic here, I think before we make a statement, it might be good to hear from the board, the Van Carmen board. What do they think is going on? And then maybe from each town manager, well, we have some from the town manager. Not that necessarily would force us into anything, but I'm just curious, what do they think is happening?
What do you mean by what's happening?
Well, do both towns realize they have one person only from the town? Do they know that?
Yeah, of course they do,
Okay.
yeah. Because nobody wanted to step forward, I don't believe. I've reached out since then and had Micah talk with, Mark to see where's our other representative. If that's
And
what's in the
did you-
contract, I haven't heard back yet.
Okay, because I'm just curious. I don't know, I mean, when I think about it, I don't know that Hermon can necessarily tell the other towns what to do. Basically, we invite them. I guess, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know what the answer is. But they should be represented.
They have the option to.
Yeah. And then if they're not, what, do we just say, I don't know, every time there's a school committee meeting, there's no representative for Carmel at this meeting?
No, they just only have one right now.
Well, I'm not saying,
If I were to
But we
find
don't
a problem, the problem, if we had, say, two people from Carmel, and we had a real question coming from Levant, and it wasn't being addressed because they weren't being.
right.
If somebody were asking me what the problem is with the RSU right now, it's that they only have one person there.
And they maybe need to sweep their own trucks.
It is- It isn't that they're
Not
blocking,
us
that
worrying.
any one town is blocking the other, there's an
Yeah.
open seat there, I'd be happy for the school janitor to come in some ways, just so we could,
I think you're right. I think from my perspective, it doesn't really affect us at all. Whether they send somebody or not, it's their loss if they don't. I go back to, which I lost the motion on, but I go back to the fact that they don't have term limits. And that's a real bothersome issue to me. I think they should have, and we should require it, and it's our school committee, and I think we're too worried about what they're gonna think about it.
Right.
I think we should make the decision. Well, we already voted on, we can vote again, whatever, but I still think that's a critical issue. I think it's wrong for them to have people on there for 15, 20 years. It's strong.
Well, I agree with you in principle on that. I'm back one step though about, I don't know, can we dictate to them? And I don't think we can. And so, if they don't send somebody,
Well, we can dictate it if it's part of our contract. I mean, that's part of the negotiations probably with the contract. I mean, if we change our charter to say that they have to comply with the term limits that our people have to comply with, and we've already determined that what's in the contract and what's in the charter must be one and the same, I think we can dictate it. And I don't think we need to worry about it.
Well, I mean, I think we can do that. I mean, if it's a contract, it's up to those folks to send somebody. I don't think it changes the contract. I think if it's in our charter, it's gonna be in their contract, whether they fulfill that requirement
A
or
Saint
not.
Bernard.
Yeah, I don't think we certainly would like them to. I mean, I'm sure there are people over there that have ideas on what they wanna for their, secondary education, but.
Like I said, I don't think it affects us one way or the other. If they send somebody who don't, it's their loss if they don't. I just think it goes back to the original point that they almost go hand in hand is, should we force them to require term limits on their people?
well,
9 years is a
question.
long time.
Right now, we're looking for a motion to ask or require them, right? We're on choice 2, so that's the one we're talking about.
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, as
I
long
make
as
a motion
everybody,
just to keep it as is and not require them to have one member from each.
So maybe we should do it affirmatively and then vote it down.
What do you?
So in other words, we'll make the motion second and we should vote it down. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh.
Just for the record. I mean,
Which-
because I'm not disagreeing with you, by the way, on this
No.
one at all.
What was your motion that you were thinking?
I just say just keep it the same, so I mean, I'll make a motion and then a second and then we can vote, but
I'm hung up on can we even do it?
Well, I think we're talking two different
Yeah.
things here, so which thing are we talking what we can't do?
Directing a town that they must, when the charters with RSU, and I'm looking to Josh on this one, the charters with RSU. So
Contract, I mean,
The contract.
no, our charter is with the RSU.
Oh.
So can the charter, through the RSU, make a town do something? Because it might be voting on something to move forward.
Well, that's exactly right, so we would, that's something that I would take to the attorney and say, tell me if this is even.
We could be
well, the
voting.
charter doesn't have anything to do with the RSU, the contract does, but the charter doesn't. The charter is strictly a Hermon
Right.
organizational process.
So are we saying we wanna change the contract?
I'm not saying anything, I'm just saying that
no, we're just talking the charter, to my knowledge.
Yeah,
That's all.
we're charged to do the charter mentions RSU 87. So I'm hung up on whether we can make RSU 87 make their towns do it.
well, we're not making them, because they don't have term limits now. So we're not making them have term limits, we're just saying that the people that you're sending must comply with the same term limits as our people do. So in other words, they can send one person for 3 years, somebody else for 3 years if they want, or somebody for 1 year and somebody else the next year. As long as they have.
When they send nobody.
Yeah.
It's an interesting question, because I think about this. I guess this is one time you're not gonna believe this coming out of my mouth. I'd be interested in what a lawyer had to say.
We're videoing
I'd
this.
$5. No, because think about what you're saying here. Does our charter dictate to their school RSU what they have to do? And you'd have to say, well, where's the authority?
I guess
You
I would
thought it
agree
was
with
in
you
the
100%,
contract.
and I would ask, then why are we even here if we haven't done that? Having all these meetings.
And I take it one step further back of, what is the problem? And I see the opposite problem. You know, if we were having a situation where we had the same people in the same seats for 20 years, and people knocking on the door saying, hey, we wanna get these people moved, can you do something? But if, the problem I'm identifying is, I want somebody else in that seat to represent RSU 87.
You want an additional person.
Well, no, I want both seats filled.
Right, okay,
Right.
yeah. But then, so we have that, and then we have term limits.
Right.
So we should be careful.
But we've already talked about the term limits, and
Right.
so I think right now we're on, do we want one member or another? And I move that no action be taken on this item. I clarify my previous motion.
I will second that motion.
Discussion.
I'm glad to hear that. So now we know. That
And
is
certainly, what's the board, who's the board member, what town is the board member with now? Who comes now? What town member?
I
And what
don't know
town is she from?
Deb is from.
That and
Okay, so-
both were originally from the.
So currently, we're letting them know that they don't have, even though they have kids in the secondary education, we're not requiring that town to have representation at the school board. I
They-
think
They're
we
not
should-
sending them, it's not our requirement, they're
No.
just not sending anybody.
No, and that's probably gonna change. They don't have somebody now, but in 6 months, they may have somebody very interested.
Exactly.
Or a year. I'm not looking to force them to do anything. I think I'd like to see it in the charter that we have one each, because quite honestly, their kids are coming into the system. There should be some accountability from their end. Or they have citizens that are gonna say, hey, you know, my kids has this issue at the high school, or we'd like to see that. And they would have representation from both their towns, the ability, even though if they wanted to, they could come in and speak in public directly to the school board. But certainly have that representation on there that shows that they have skin in the game. I mean, you know, this is quite a very good school system. I think they should appreciate having the opportunity to put somebody on the board, to put somebody up on that stage.
Well,
I
there's
think
also
they-
some money in the game, and they don't get a voice.
They have an opportunity at every one of their committee meetings to share with our representative. None of them wanted to be able to participate right now. You're absolutely right. In the future, some may. But I think it could be a dream if we could even have 2 from Carmel, or 2 from Levant. So to limit it 1 and 1, I just think is too much.
Wouldn't there be a way when and I'm assuming that the negotiations for the contract are the superintendent and the director for the RSU board. You know, maybe that's a conversation they can have if they ever update the contract, and they could say, you know, a preference, the preference in the contract is to have, representation from each community, rather than having to, make it more direct in our charter, which kind of seems like when the charter is more detailed, then that's harder to undo if need be. I mean, it just seems like
If you
that
have
would
it
be
in the
the
charter,
place to
then
do that.
and we've already made a recommendation that the charter and the contract have to coincide, then that would solve that problem. Whether they send them or not, it's up to them, it's their loss if they don't, but.
In my opinion, it seems like the contract would be more specific about stuff in the charter, just because it's, we're further away from it too, but, from the parties that are involved, but also, it's, it's obviously a lot harder to change the charter than we make it too stringent or whatever, and then they don't have somebody from each county, anyway.
Do you know what I was thinking? Maybe this is a good time to say, and actually maybe Stephanie would be a good one to do this. Ask, I don't know how this works, but ask the superintendents to weigh in, talk, I assume they talk to each other. And just weigh in on what they think about this and what they think that the charter group ought to be thinking about. Because I just have you know what this is starting to feel like to me? You know when your fishing line gets in a big ball? I think we're headed there. Because there's too many potential players out there, including you, and $5 on the lawyer. What kind of jurisdiction we have, and if you can write, I don't know if you can write something like that into a contract. I really don't know.
I mean, it's in the contract now.
Well, I know, but I don't know if you can do that. I'd be interested if that's an okay thing to do.
I think that's a school board committee issue, but it's.
So you think, is that something could you say that to Micah, and would you three talk this over and send us
Well, I would assume, didn't somebody already have a conversation with them about that for the, like, what is our purpose here?
Well,
And have we
that
had
was-
those conversations beforehand?
That was gonna be kind of what came of these meetings, was to take the discussions from here and then discuss
Oh.
it
Discuss it too.
So maybe we're at that point.
with, so the RSU was something that has kind of come in towards the end, you know, what Mr. Burgess brought up. So if there's anything, just like the validation, we don't have the school's attorney here, but the school's attorney is gonna need to weigh in on that. Anything with the RSU, I was thinking, you know, what we took from this, like what you're saying, you know,
Right.
okay, let's bring Mike in and discuss it with.
So maybe we should like make a list of 5 questions that we would like answered before we were trying. So one is term limits for the 2 towns.
They've already term limits are.
Right. Well, no, but I'm saying from the superintendents. I mean, they may say, well, we don't really care, but the other one was, are they even aware that they've only got, I'm assuming they must know they don't have a representative.
Well, the county manager didn't know it, but he's new to, the other one drowned, and he's just,
100% their committee knew, none of them wanted to come. Our meetings are extremely long.
did
So
anybody
you
give
knew,
a reason
did
as to
they-
why?
Did the
Yeah.
super tell you that?
No, I know that, when the committee
Okay.
member was no longer able to attend, none of them wanted to participate.
And there was no, do they, well, I don't know, do they have a mechanism? But I'm just, again, I'm thinking about this, because we can talk, and as soon as one of us says, no, we don't want that, then we're back to square one again.
No, we don't want one.
So we don't want it in the contract. Then what do we do?
Well, I mean,
Well,
it's
we
good.
don't
If it's in our charter, they're gonna have to either follow it. They're not gonna have, I don't think they're gonna
I
have a
don't-
problem giving them representation at the Hermon School Board. I mean, that's
I
a
mean, I
very big
agree.
positive.
If you offer it, it's like, you gotta ask to the prom if you don't wanna go, well, right? But,
There's a motion on the floor, unless we have more discussion, we'll keep moving. Would you just,
Second, your
sorry,
motion.
I move that no action be taken on this item
we have a
to
second.
have,
But which
to
part?
have, send, example number 6, to require RSU 87 to send 1 member from Carmel and 1 member from Levan. So no action be taken, just keep it 2 members.
And that's from RB 417. You have RB 417?
I do have that here.
You have it. It's right
Who seconded that?
we haven't.
there. RB did, I think.
Okay.
So
RB,
we're-
alright, I finally got that, I was like, what is RB, do I ask? And then I'm like, oh, okay, alright.
Don't you think it sounds more like a legal thing?
It does.
RB 417.
Let's go ahead and have a vote. All in favor
All
of
in
the
favor?
motion?
No action
Oh,
taken.
so no action taken?
Yeah.
Okay, write that down.
Yep, I get.
You did it.
All opposed? yeah, I'm just going down, so here, we're gonna discuss, this discussion is gonna revolve around having those same RSU 87 committee members only while they sit on the board and currently, so we're just talking about two, even though one's,
We have one ghost and one real.
there's two there. According to our conversation, there'll be two there. But that, so we're gonna talk about that those folks will discuss, or will vote on, not discuss, will vote on only secondary education matters. And
And I just wanna add that no decisions are made in subcommittees. That's just where discussion happens to be able to bring in front of the committee, so what are we trying to change? That they wouldn't be able to be on any committees?
no, this is just,
This
so
is
this, how about just voting? Let's talk about that piece first.
Can they?
So those two on the stage, as the votes come up, they will be voting on secondary matters.
Where are you seeing that? What example is this?
Go ahead with the
Oh, I'm
question.
sorry.
Back up.
This was from a prior list that we
This would
had.
be RB
No, it was just a
410.
general,
410,
it was just off a general discussion.
I
and
gotta
Rick-
put that on here, RB
and
410.
Is this a new one?
No, this was an original one.
So, and originally, so this committee originally was tasked with section 6, so that's, I mean, basically, that's what puts us in this section of the school board. And in there, it talks about, in the, let me find it, in the charter, it talks about, I'm just gonna go ahead and read that. In addition to 5 members above, there shall be also 2 members of the school committee to be appointed by the directors of RSU 87 for as long as secondary school tuition students from RSU 87 are contracting with the town of Hermon, and they comprise no less, can you make a note right there? Sorry.
Yeah, 25%.
That's just grammatical. Comprise, not compromise. No less than 25% of the secondary education student population at Hermon High School. The school committee did I already read by it?
So, okay, and then
So,
there's
The
voting.
discussion here is going to, on the front of the charter, list section 6. And so the discussion is going to be pulling that secondary language into the charter.
So my only question, I guess, back to, and it would end up being Josh, is in the charter amended on the 12th, on 2012, there was the specific language. And then on the amendment effective July 13, the language was removed and it was specifically put into the contract. So I think it's important for us to know why the original, or why the language that was originally there back in 2013, 2012 was removed in the first place. Because if you, the older charter has that specific language in there. And I can only assume that it was removed for a reason. So before we reinvent the wheel, it'd be nice to know the history of what the reason was that it was removed.
So you have,
What part was that?
It's 6.01.
Yeah,
so that was 6.1 is what I read that paragraph. And so we're talking about taking on the cover, on the very first page of the charter, it lists, I'm sorry, I don't have it right. Oh, here I have it. So it lists in section 6, the Department of Education is created with 7 school board committee members, 5 elected at large, being responsible for the care and management of public schools, and 2 from, that's going to be changed to RSU 87, empowered to vote on secondary education matters. So the discussion is just pulling that language into the body of the charter.
You need a motion on that?
I just want to make sure let's discuss through it just a hair more.
I just have one other, can I ask a question clarifying that point? So, as it stands now, if there's a school committee question, let's just say it's about, just say 7th grade. Do they just have to not
They
speak?
abstain.
Okay.
What did you say?
They abstain from voting?
From voting, yeah, I know, he was asking about.
But they could certainly, the discussion is open to them.
Yeah, because they can speak.
Go
I'd
ahead.
say, oh, yeah, well,
I mean, if they had, yeah, absolutely.
I think it's a good idea that we put that, because it's a little confusing.
So I think one of the discussions may be around secondary only, because RSU 87, I mean, they currently have 2 schools that they oversee of, what are the grades?
K to 8.
K to 8. Are both, are they both on that? Up to?
They have 2 schools, one in
So
up in
they
the
have 2
village and one
schools
in
currently
Carrollville.
up to 8. So, and all these kids do come in and they are all located in the high school. So I think that's kind of the general overview of why, that may be, want to be put in there.
So how often are there strictly secondary education votes? How involved are these committee members?
Employment,
That could
I
be a
mean,
reason
sometimes
why
we have votes over secondary education instructors, teachers. So employment is something, I mean, I've only been at it now for 9 months, but employment is really kind of the only thing that has jumped out at me as it being secondary only, that they abstain from.
There's no financial.
Well, I question
Well,
whether
it's
they
some-
need to, that's a whole, that'll be the next subject, that there's a whole question of financial is a secondary issue. I mean, when you start talking about they can and cannot vote on secondary issues, financial is very much a secondary issue. I mean, some of our bigger cost centers are in the secondary portion of the department, so.
Question, in your subcommittees, are the votes taken
No.
to refer things back to the main committee?
They're only advisory committees,
Okay,
so there is no voting.
so what if the committee disagrees, people in the committee disagrees on a topic, whatever it may be?
If there's a disagreement, it's just brought up as a, one committee member would say that my opinion is, and then the other committee member would say my opinion is.
I would have assumed that they had some votes, before things came.
No voting, it's an advisory only. So that's my only break that what's the problem we're trying to fix, and why was that removed in the first place? Because it's clearly written in the contract, so the school committee is trying to abide by it. So whether it's in the contract or in the charter, that doesn't make a difference to me. But it had to have been removed for a reason. Why?
And PS, I would think it would be nice to have it in there for clarity, just throwing it in there. But
What do you draw on for historical archival
I'll have to get with Kristen. She
minutes? I mean, they'll probably be minutes of some.
hopefully, depends on how far back, those years, it probably should be fairly clear. But
yeah, that's right.
we
Okay.
have had amendments, and, it's not uncommon. Some areas aren't recorded well, whether it be usually not intentional, it's just, but I can check, I'll check with Kristen. I'm sure she has a book full of just charter amendments specifically.
Yeah.
So we're gonna.
Table this.
Just hang on to that one for now.
Well, wait a second, we could, just from a procedural point, we could have a motion and a second to table.
We
if
did.
we want to on this. Only because then it kind of keeps it alive and we know what it was, if we could say we talked about it. But
I don't know if we have enough information. I mean, it is.
Table with the lack of information. I don't know. I think it's a great catch that you brought that. And it would be good to know why.
You want a motion to table?
I'm just thinking if we need to have that.
We have a motion on the floor, we can withdraw the motion.
We don't have one.
Yeah, I thought you made a motion. You didn't make a
Hold
motion.
on, I thought we were talking about subcommittees, but we're not, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We
already
voted
on
on it.
We already voted on that.
Stephanie's motion.
Question,
Yeah.
do we want to
There,
vote?
there is
I thought I
one
heard
here.
Let's just make a motion to table it for formality.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed?
And then next time we'll know.
I'll make a motion on the next one to get conversation started. And the number 9, if it's on your list there, is just I'm gonna make a motion that we require that any contract between the RSU and the Hermon School Department will comply with items in the charter and spell out what the charter.
I'll second that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Was that a motion or
I made it a motion.
Yeah, motion
He
is
seconded it.
So now,
any discussion?
so I'm gonna start by nitpicking. When we say 100% compliance, I just wanna be clear of what we're saying. Are we saying that, like, we're like terms? I don't remember if the contract says terms in it.
Listen, if people still have that contract,
Yeah.
that'd be a great, just an example to take a quick look. And that will give you an idea exactly what it is that could change during this.
So we got it right here. This is RB 419.3.
This came from Mr.
Oh, no, okay, this is Mr. Grant. 470.
Give me another copy of that.
How often is the charter updated?
No,
Is,
it's okay. I've got it.
is it just
I have
as
it.
needed?
I may have missed it.
I'm trying to remember the conversation that even brought this to me to say, hey, we need to.
It was me, it was hiring me. That's what started this all.
Well, okay, so and that just morphed into, let's just take it.
It was like, well, so I think we knew of, you know, we kinda started thinking, well, if we're gonna go through this, what else do we know we need to clean up? And it was in the same timeframe of talking about school validation and that.
Are there things in this current contract that we're looking at, or even if you guys have already had discussions on the upcoming, I mean, are things in there currently that you see that aren't?
No, actually, the contract is more restrictive than the charter. The contract answers a lot of those questions that we've already been discussing. And that might be one of the reasons why the charter was somewhat, I can only think that the reason why the charter was somewhat reduced is because the detail was put in the contract.
Maybe you could talk just a little bit about the process on how this charter, how this contract, so this is a 5-year contract.
I think it's really.
Yes, it is, yeah.
And so, I mean, when they come in with this, is certainly, I mean, they must hold this up to current policy, state law,
I mean, we're starting to look at it
and the charter. I mean, so they already hold it up to the charter.
but the charter is a pretty easy hold. I mean, if you look at the way the charter is written for RSU 87, the requirements are pretty loose in the sense that 25%, they get to have 2 members and they're voting members. And that's pretty much all the charter says.
It seems to me like I remember there being discussion a few years back, maybe it was around 2013, about that language, I just remember somebody saying something about the contract and that moving the more, some of those more specific items into the contract and out of the charter. It may have been that section we were talking about, so. But, Brian, wasn't it last week, didn't you bring up that, the contract says 2 members of the board of directors?
Yes,
And in the charter, it
does
says
not
appointed by,
appointed by.
so I guess, if that was the recommendation, we ended up moving forward, that everything needs to agree, obviously that would be one of the things that, when they are discussing it, we'll have to
I mean, technically,
figure it out.
this says it must be 2 members, this says appointed by. Well, it doesn't specify it must be members, it can be somebody else. So this is in compliant, but if anything, it's more restrictive. It's saying it only can come from the board of directors.
Right,
Where our charter says that it can be appointed by the directors, doesn't say that it has to be.
right, yeah. Some years it's Probably better to have it more forward, so, but that
I
would
mean,
be
it
under
says
that.
two, sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
It says 2 members of the school committee to be appointed by the directors. That doesn't signify that they have to be 2 members of the school committee
Not
in
to-
RSU 87.
As part of the charter, that does not tell me it needs to be from the board of directors. It says the directors by the directors of RSU. 2 members of the school committee to be appointed by the directors of RSU 87. That tells me that the board of directors, body of 6, could appoint anybody.
It says 2 school board members.
Well, it's
To-
saying
to
two
our
members
school
to
board.
the Hermon school.
Right, and then the contract comes in behind it and says that that it'll be 2 members of the board of directors.
This one right here. In the contract.
Oh, no, the contract.
Yeah, the contract is what makes sure that it is members of the. Voting privileges will be granted to 2 members of the board of directors of RSU 87, rather than the charter that simply says appointed by RSU 87. So it's the contract, it's more stringent than the charter.
Yeah, this is saying they have to be one of those 6 or 2
Yeah.
of those 6 versus, yep, I see what you're saying.
And maybe they, maybe that's what they decided.
So the contract is more stringent than the charter.
I'm not sure what we do with that. Once again, we're back to, do we tell them, you better get somebody besides member? I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I guess I never look at it as telling anybody to do anything, because Stetson could all of a sudden get a school department that wants to come into 87 or some other town, and they're gonna come in looking at our charter. I mean, I think they must all know you're not gonna come in Hermon and not look at the charter first and determine that that's your guidance.
But for that very reason, I think that's why they don't mention it by town, they mention it by RSU. So RSU 87, we don't care who you made up of them anyways, it's the board of directors.
But if they had another town coming, which is probably unlikely, but if they did, they'd have a separate contract between Hermon and Glenburn, for instance, or whatever.
No, it'd still be with RSU 87, because they become part of RSU 87. We have the contract with RSU 87, so however
Yeah,
they
you're
change.
saying-
Well, yeah, but not, I think what he was saying was if Glenburn or Stetson or something that's not part of RSU 87 wanted to become seventy.
Yeah, I see what you're saying,
It has
yes.
a different contract.
Is there any more discussion on that as far as, so we're asking that all the contracts between 87 and the Hermon School Department be 100% compliant with the Hermon Charter.
I don't like the word 100%,
And I don't
because
like-
I think that the school should be able to be more restrictive.
You can
Or
be
even-
compliant by being more restrictive, but with that language, it does not specify Article 6. You say the Hermon Charter, now you're making the contract having to be compliant with all the articles of the charter.
Right.
And I'm not sure, I haven't read through the entire charter to see what other articles might be in there that could trip us up. I mean, I know there's an article on there on, purchasing. Do we have to now look at how the contract is to comply with the purchasing? In regards to RSU 87, I just think that language needs to be careful, that we're really talking about Article 6.
I think that question deserves a little more discussion. And I don't know, I mean, certainly that's one of those items that should be tabled, but that's, if that's where people are ready to go, we should have, I mean, I believe it needs to have more discussion, but.
I support that it should be the contract should be in line with Article 6. I have no reservations with that. The only flag I'm throwing is we really have to take a look to see how it affects all the other articles within the charter. I mean, there's 12 articles here that I've really only delved into 6.
But only Article 6 deals with the school.
And that's
Right,
probably,
is
there's
there
only
anything
a
else
legal
that could apply, is my concern.
But that
Just
would be a question for the lawyers
That's
as
what I was
well.
kind of looking through here.
So you're retracting your motion and then we can amend it to say,
I
to
didn't
be
know I
in
put
No, I'm
compliance?
sorry, I didn't hear a motion.
I didn't-
Sorry about that.
I thought there already was a motion and a second.
I did not hear a motion. Sorry if I jumped out ahead of you, I was, okay.
I'm gonna make.
I made a motion.
We-
Oh, yeah,
To
you
get
did.
the discussion started,
Oh, that's
somebody
right,
seconded.
yeah, we did.
And that motion.
I'm
was
sorry,
just-
Rick.
That's okay. That's okay.
If we were to say that the contract needed to comply with Article 6, I would see absolutely no issues with that at all.
So then if you retract it, then we could.
Okay,
and
I
you
retract my
it, then we
second.
could
I'll
close
retract
one.
mine and go ahead and make a new one.
And I don't see a problem with making our charter the law of the, I mean, it is Hermon's constitution. I think anybody coming to do business certainly should hold that up as, you know,
Be in compliance.
and I agree. I mean, we could certainly, I think the majority of the look through that charter is not, I don't think it's gonna expose a whole lot, but I think it's worth going through, you know, to make sure any of this and, I mean, we don't have any other business with RSU 87, do we?
Not that I know.
So,
Well, there
is
one-
this
can I
a
just-
contract, sorry about that.
There is one point though with them, while we're on this. If you look at number 2 on the policy committee, there's equal representation from the Hermon School Committee and RSU Board of Directors. Is that happening?
Yes.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
Is the tuition piece in here?
Yes. It says it'll be the legal tuition piece as directed by the Department of Education, some language to
Oh.
that effect.
Oh, okay, yeah. And do we have, we don't need to discuss this now, but do we have, I mean, what kind of deal we have as far as buses and things of that nature? Is
Their
there-
job is to lead bus.
They transport
Yep,
their
that's in the contract, they transport.
transport.
Yeah, bring them here, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, that's on number 3. Agrees to provide secondary student transportation only to Hermon High School, with the exception of students attending Bangor regional programs.
Doesn't say they have to take them home.
Yeah, it doesn't say they have to take them
And you know, I think that these discussions on these contracts are certainly both, it's not Hermon coming in with a hammer telling 87 what they're gonna do. I mean, the boards discuss these things
Yeah.
mutually, right? And so, I mean, there's still gonna be the opportunity for 100% compliance if that's, you know, for them to come in and have that discussion. Nobody's gonna get caught or tripped up in this, especially where you're in a current, we're creating the next contract.
Couldn't we just keep it as compliant with Article 6? It's the schools.
But then we're limiting to, they're gonna have to be elected for a term of the 3 years.
That's kind of back in the beginning, wasn't it, trying to get both of them compliant or.
Well, and also, did we answer the question? Are they members of the board,
Yes.
or does the board appoint them?
We are members of the Hermon School Committee.
But does the RSU board? Because I think what I heard us say, voting privileges to 2 members of the RSU board. Now, I'm not on the board, they call me and say, hey, you wanna be our representative, can I do that?
I don't know why not. I don't think we've done it that way. I mean, somebody's usually on the school committee for a year.
Yeah.
But there's nothing in here that says that they couldn't change them every month.
I don't think it's a bad idea, to be honest with you, but I'm just curious, you know, would that be? Because technically, what the contract, it's just cleaning up that language.
Which, I mean, if they adopted a concept like that, that would negate any sort of
Yeah.
term limits, because one person could represent them this month and another member,
That's right.
but that's really up to them on how they wanna do it.
Yeah, I suppose that could be a little bit of a nightmare for the school committee trying to keep track of
Who's who.
have to show proof of residence.
I think clearly the spirit of that is that they want 2 people to represent those towns with the Hermon. school. I mean, I think that's the spirit that we're trying to create there. Okay, so we retracted that motion. And are we saying we want to table, we want more discussion on this? Before we say 100% compliant.
Well, and I also, yeah, and back to what you started with there was that we have it, this piece here, and then right at the beginning in Article 6. I think that's part of what we're talking about here in the charter, and then with that, be consistent in the contract. I don't know that, but I think it's a good idea to get that, have it open like that. And maybe do nothing, well, except change it to RSU 87.
But I mean, that'll be a discussion for the school board to have with RSU 87.
Right.
Okay.
No, I agree.
The difference in the language right now is simply that one document says that they shall appoint 2 members appointed by the board of directors, and the other one says they must be from the board of directors. Can they be from the public? Can they send, somebody, another citizen down, or does that have to be one of the 6?
Well, according to our current contract, it must be one of the 6. According to the current contract.
That's what I was saying. That's why that's why it's not compliant with the charter.
That would make sense. I was thinking about it from the town, from their town, because then they report back. But on the other hand, if nobody wants to do it, what are you gonna do? Call the janitor.
And I guess at least with the way the charter's written, then that gives them, if they decided that they, instead of writing it that way in the contract, then, they'd be compliant.
Is the motion off the table?
Yeah, we took that
I
off.
make a motion to table, the item to require that the contracts be in 100% compliance with each other.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Tabling, yes.
Can I make a suggestion for future meetings for us to consider moving public comment up to the top, because I just wanna be considerate, and we run almost out of time every time with a hard stop of 7.
We did that intentionally though, so that Greg couldn't talk very long.
I'm suggesting we change it perhaps.
If we're ready, we can go to public comment, unless you want to have other business.
I just had a question for the group.
Go ahead.
Would it be helpful, I believe it would be helpful, to go through like 602, 603, 604. If nobody has a problem, we go on, and then see where we're gonna focus our energies. Cause I read through these actually a couple of times, and most of them, I don't think there's any problem. I can say that we can circle back, but,
I thought we were limited to 6.01 though.
I mean, that was the idea, was to look at that. But the charge is section 6, so if,
Oh, okay.
there's nothing stopping us from looking.
If you see something there, absolutely.
well, and again, I'm reading it more for proofing and everything. And I didn't say anything, but, again, I don't know a lot of stuff. For example, is it still the 1,500 per year compensation?
Yes,
Okay, yep. Okay, I think it should be more, but that's,
like 50 cents now.
And then we talked about compliment.
Not even.
Just
Yeah.
like
You saw that.
grammatical.
anyway.
We're gonna allow public comment.
Public comment.
Social media time.
So, I know there was a bunch of discussion on if the charter can dictate
Sorry.
to RSU 87.
Would you say your name? Sorry.
Oh, Greg Newell,
Thank
Hermon. The charter currently actually does dictate to RSU 87. It says there shall be also 2 members, not 4, not 6, not 1. And it says be appointed by the director of RSU 87. It doesn't say the citizens, doesn't say the town manager, the superintendent. So we are already dictating to them what they can and can't do. So the discussion of term limits and dictating term limits to them is well within our charter's ability to do. So, and same with if we want to dictate to them, that comes from both towns. So we're already dictating to them what they can and can't do. So I just want to point that out. And that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other committee member items? Anybody?
I just wanna know what the intent of next week's meeting is that we're gonna be discussing. If there's follow-up that needs to be happening between now and then, so it can be a productive hour.
Here's, I think we had this discussion last time that certainly as a public meeting, you should have an agenda prior to.
The meeting.
So we're going to, this time we will, and is Rick back this week?
Yeah, he said he'd be back next week, he's only gone.
We will attempt to have an agenda out prior to with the items of discussion on there.
And hopefully you'll hear, hopefully I'll have some back from
Yeah, the biggest thing for me in my mind is the attorneys and the validation portion.
three.
And we had a couple items that we tabled, they ought to be listed on this.
Correct.
And then, just so we're clear, so we're just gonna focus on that. All this other stuff, we don't have to fuss with. We don't have to worry about 602, 603.
I mean, if you have questions in there, that, again, that wasn't our target. I think we just assumed that the bigger pieces were in that paragraph, because we also were dealing with a contract, but no, I mean, if you see things in there.
No, I'm good.
Or even, a citizen may come to you and say, what about 6.4? I mean, if somebody comes to you, by all means, yeah.
I just would do, maybe I'm saying, should we poll the group and ask, when you read through, were there any we ought to be paying attention to? And if there is, great, and if not, then we don't even talk about some of the other ones. Because I don't think we need to.
I think if people have questions, they should certainly send them to Rick and to Josh during the week, and we'll get it on there. I mean, even if it's just a brief conversation, or, I mean, that may be a better.
Maybe it's a good way to do it.
If you could get a little bit of historical why that secondary education paragraph was removed from the charter.
Yep.
Because it's clearly written by statute in the contract, so it was removed for a reason.
The other question that you were kind of looking into, which kind of ties into that, was what was the reasoning that they took out one from Carmel, one from Levant, and went to two from RSU 87? And you thought she might have it in her notes somewhere. It came to me. You said that.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
How come she didn't adjourn
All in
on
favor?
that quick?
Oh, I do.
She
I
does.
do.
And you're on for next week, or?
I believe that,
Hang a chat, but I got another meeting at 7:30. I gotta be at.
yeah, I believe that's the
That
next.
way you're-
I don't have my.
Yeah.
The other way.
Lady
That way
does
you're
it.
ready.
I don't think we missed.
Yeah.
Oh.
You know, about kind of what we were thinking about. Are we still in that?
I would say so, yeah. I mean, really, in my opinion, we've got 2 meetings to
Yeah.
be done.
Not if we keep telling them to go ask the lawyers.
So, hey, whatever we don't get to, we don't, I mean, it's just,